While the world watched tanks roll across Europe and armies clash on distant beaches, another war was already underway. It was a silent, relentless conflict, invisible to most civilians. It wasn't fought for cities or flags, but for survival itself. This was the Battle of the Atlantic, the longest continuous campaign of World War II, a sprawling war fought across thousands of miles of open ocean, where victory was measured not in territory, but in tonnage sunk and ships that made it through. When World War II began in 1939, Britain stood alone. As an island nation, its very existence depended on overseas supply lines. Every month, it needed millions of tons of food, fuel, ammunition, and raw materials just to keep fighting. Cut those sea lanes, and Britain would starve into surrender. Germany understood this perfectly. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the German submarine force, believed he could win the war without ever setting foot on British soil. His weapon of choice? The U-boat, small, hard to detect, and incredibly deadly. His strategy was brutally simple: sink merchant ships faster than the Allies could replace them. At first, it worked frighteningly well. British convoys were unprotected, poorly coordinated, and stretched dangerously thin. Merchant sailors, many with little training, sailed into waters where they knew submarines were waiting below. When torpedoes struck, chaos erupted. Ships went down in minutes, sometimes in seconds. Survivors clung to lifeboats, freezing in the icy Atlantic as the sea swallowed the wreckage around them. By 1940, Britain was losing ships at a catastrophic rate, teetering on the brink of collapse. Then the war expanded. After Pearl Harbor, when the United States entered the conflict, German submarines moved their hunting grounds right up to the American coastline. In what became known as the Second Happy Time, U-boats operated almost unopposed. Coastal cities, unaware of the lurking danger, kept their lights on at night, silhouetting passing ships against the horizon and turning them into easy targets. Tankers burned within sight of American beaches. American sailors died before the country even fully realized it was under attack. The Atlantic had become a graveyard. What made this war so different was its nature. There were no front lines, no dramatic charges. Just long, agonizing days of tension, followed by seconds of sheer terror. Escort crews listened endlessly to sonar pings, their ears straining to distinguish the sound of a submarine from the echoes of the ocean itself. Convoys became floating fortresses. Destroyers and corvettes zigzagged constantly, like sheepdogs guarding a slow, vulnerable flock of merchant ships that could barely defend themselves. When a U-boat was detected, the escorts would attack with depth charges, huge explosives that shook the very foundations of the sea in an attempt to crush steel hulls hidden far below. But the hunters were also the hunted. Life aboard a U-boat was a living nightmare. Crews lived in darkness, breathing diesel fumes, their nerves frayed by constant fear. Patrols lasted for months. Food spoiled. Sleep was a luxury. One mistake, one miscalculation, and the entire crew would be lost, entombed in their steel coffin at the bottom of the ocean. The unforgiving sea showed no mercy to either side. For years, the battle hung in a delicate balance. Losses mounted on both sides. Morale wavered. Allied leaders, including Churchill and Roosevelt, privately feared that even if their armies won on land, the war could still be lost at sea. Then, slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Technology changed everything. New, more powerful radar systems allowed aircraft to spot submarines on the surface, even at night or in thick fog. Long-range patrol planes, like the B-24 Liberator, were able to close the deadly mid-Atlantic air gap, a vast area where convoys had once been defenseless from the sky. A groundbreaking technology, nicknamed HFDUF, or high-frequency direction finding, allowed the Allies to pinpoint the location of U-boats every time they transmitted a radio message. Escort carriers, small aircraft carriers built on merchant ship hulls, brought air cover deep into the Atlantic, right into the heart of the U-boat hunting grounds. But perhaps the most decisive factor of all was the sheer power of Allied industry. American shipyards, in particular, began producing Liberty ships at a staggering rate. They were simple, mass-produced cargo vessels, but they could be built faster than U-boats could sink them. Where Germany destroyed one vessel, two more would appear on the horizon. For the first time, Admiral Dinitz's grim arithmetic stopped working. By mid-1943, the Atlantic had become a death trap for German submarines. U-boats were hunted relentlessly from the air and from the sea. The devastating wolf packs that had once terrorized the convoys were broken apart and systematically destroyed. Losses skyrocketed. U-boat crews who once believed they were winning now sailed knowing their odds of survival were shrinking with every patrol. Germany couldn't replace its experienced submariners fast enough. The hunters had become the hunted. By the time Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day in June 1944, the outcome of the war had already been decided, not on those beaches, but on the sea lanes that made the entire invasion possible. The Battle of the Atlantic had been won. It never had a single decisive moment. There was no surrender ceremony on the deck of a battleship. No iconic photograph burned into the public memory. It was a war of attrition, won day by day, convoy by convoy. It was a war fought by ordinary merchant sailors, naval crews, and pilots whose names were rarely known. On ships that rarely appeared in the headlines, in vast, empty waters where survival depended on discipline, patience, and unwavering endurance. They fought a war that almost no one saw, and by winning it, they saved the world. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of courage and sacrifice as fascinating as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten battles that shaped our history. See you next time.